And we are live. Hey everyone, this is Nicholas Roman, author and creator of Scratch Health, How to Create a Whole New You in 90 Days from Scratch. We've been a little bit on vacation with July 4th and some last 2 weeks. You guys haven't seen my face on here talking about some of the good stuff that we talk about, but we are back, and we're back with a fantastic expert, as we always do. We have some good quality experts on here talking about their field, and today's no different. So we have Micheal Williams, I'm going to introduce in just a moment. But this guy right here is fantastic. He has done and doing some amazing work in the field of I guess speech therapy would be considered. He might correct me in a moment because I know he doesn't consider himself a therapist, so he might try to punch me over the Google Hangout here. so, anyhow, we're gonna get his start here. Actually, matter of fact, Hey, Micheal, I'm gonna introduce
Yes,
you right now. But are you hearing this? I'm getting like
I am hearing that. I'm hearing you perfectly, but I'm hearing that other.
it's like an echo, right? Sorry, guys. I know we're live, but
Yeah.
we're getting some technical difficulties.
It
Give me
sounds like.
1 second. Hmm. I don't know where that's coming from. Oh, hold on. I see. I think I know what it is.
Okay.
Interesting.
It is an echo. That's right. That's.
It's actually talking over me. Hold on. What's what's going on? Okay, we fixed that.
Okay.
All right. Sorry about that, guys. That was bizarre. That was bizarre. All right, but let's get right into this so we don't waste any more time with some craziness. Anyhow, I was gonna try to introduce Micheal Williams here, but apparently I got hit up with all kind of technical difficulties. So I'm gonna allow him to introduce himself. So everyone, this is Micheal Williams. Let's give him a great hand for being on the show today. Hey,
Thank you,
Micheal,
Nicholas.
how's it going?
It's going very well, Nicholas. Thank you for having me here.
No
It's great.
problem. I appreciate your time, and I'm pretty sure I'm unique in the way where you've never had a interview where you had some bizarre things going on in the background right in the first 30 seconds. So we're gonna make do.
Yeah, I've been in technology for a while as we were talking, and all kinds of things happen, man. So it's cool.
It's just how it is, right? Murphy's
Yeah.
law. You can't do nothing about it. So let's kind of get right into about you. One of the things that I love to do
Hmm.
with every expert is, there's something, some kind of driving force. There's some kind of inspiration, motivation that stems from somewhere that leads most people who are experts to get into the field that they're in and
Hmm.
really take it to that expert level, because there's a lot of people who know about things, but to really become an expert you have to kind of make it your life's passion, right?
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
it's a different level of dedication. It's a different level of work ethic. So I'm always fascinated by what was it that really did it for you. What was it that pushed you over the edge to decide to become who you are today? If you can kind of just go into that, that'd be fantastic.
Okay. I'll try to keep this relatively short because I don't want to tell like a real long story, but um,
That's fine. This platform is all for you today, so you take as much time as you
Okay. Make sure you give me a copy of this then. But basically, it started from the fact that I used to stutter myself growing up, right? So I stuttered from whatever, kindergarten, first grade, uh, from the time that I can remember, all the way up, well into my 20s, well into my mid to late 20s, let's say. And so I struggled with that. Sometimes it was worse, sometimes it wasn't so bad, but it limited me because I would be in class, in school or whatever, and I wouldn't raise my hand because I felt like I couldn't say what I wanted to say. So there were things that I really wanted to do that I didn't do because of stuttering. It didn't really prevent me from going through school, doing the things that I wanted to do, going to the military, as an officer, or whatever. But I do remember one time I was standing in front of my troops, but this was in a training environment, and I couldn't get a command out.
need.
That only happened once, was very embarrassing. And it was shortly after that that I started working on myself. So why did I go into this? Because I struggled with stuttering, for most of my life. Um, over the years, I got into various different fields, but the last field that I was in prior to starting this business was I was a relationship coach. And what we did was I taught relationship workshops. And so over the last several years, I would guess the last 15 years or so, I've been making my living speaking, ministry. I'm currently a professor at a community college. So
Mm.
I make my living speaking.
Right, right.
And working as a relationship coach was fine. It was cool, but it wasn't my calling. It wasn't my passion, like you said. So I did some soul searching. I was like, okay, what is it that I'm called to do? So I kind of researched myself. I looked into my own life. I looked out into the marketplace and said, where's there a need? Where's there a niche? Where can I be the best? And speech, stuttering. That's what came up.
Hmm.
So I started just some online stuff, just some audio. Then I eventually graduated to video. And so I just got started with online stuff. And to bring us right up to date, what actually launched this into a full-time business was the program that I was working with was a grant-funded program.
Okay.
And the grant expired. And so I was basically out of a job. And I had started the business, but it wasn't making enough money. It was a couple $100 a month or something. So I got another little job that didn't work out. And so I was like really almost depressed because I was like, I really feel like I'm called to do this speech coaching stuff, but I can't see how I'm going to make any money. So this Indian guy, young guy, he's a doctor, calls me up or emails me and says, "Hey, I want you to coach me." So we started corresponding, and I didn't think he was serious. So he emailed me a few times. He says, "Well, I want you to coach me, and my dad really wants you to coach me." So started coaching him, talked to his dad, and his dad said, "Hey, what do you need to coach my son?" He says, "Money is not an issue. I have more money than what I can spend." I was like,
Wow.
okay. So he said, "What do you need? What do you need to do to coach my son to get him up to fluency, to improve his confidence, so forth?" So that started a relationship. So they said, "Hey, we're going to India and we're going to be there for the next few months. How'd you like to come over and stay with us and coach my son for like," he said, "and how long can you stay?" I said, "Well, I can probably stay a month." So they flew me to India. This was 2 years ago to stay there and to coach their son. And that launched my coaching career. And then they flew me back last year for like a follow-up session.
Wow. That's fast. That's awesome.
Yeah.
A month in India. How was the experience out there?
Man, it was very different. The second time, I was a little more used to it. But the first time, just the traffic and the number of people and everything was just, it really does a job on your senses. But the people there are wonderful, wonderful people. The people that I worked with, the whole family, awesome. They became my mentors, like the father did. And he said, "This is what you need to do to grow your business," because this guy's a multimillionaire. He said, "This is what you need to do." And I started doing it, and my business started growing. And every time I would kind of get off track, my business would kind of slow down some. So I
Mm.
learned a lot, as well as being able to help their son.
So let me ask you this question, because I'm sure there, people watching this, they watch this channel for various reasons, whether it's nutrition, fitness, things like that. I'm sure
Mm,
there's going to be some people out there who are watching who might be stutterers or stammerers, and they're watching this, and I just want you to kind of explain from your own experience,
mm,
because like I told you, intimately I know someone, my own brother who does stutter, but he would be, I guess, considered someone who mildly stutters because it's not an all the time thing, and for the most part you wouldn't even know if you just
mm,
met him that he really does stutter,
mm,
as opposed to some of the people that I've seen on your website that you helped, and who are more chronic and help them to become more fluent. What did
mm.
it feel like when you finally went from feeling helpless, like you said, growing up most of your life, dealing with this, battling it, not really knowing how to take control of it, and then finally being able to take that burden off of your shoulders and finally realize, you know what, I can be fluent. I know how. I have the tools. I have the strategies, and
Mm.
boom, this thing was conquered. I finally have the methodology and the philosophy to get this done. How did that really feel, so that people out there who are watching, they can have a sense of what's to come for them if they really want it and follow some of your work?
Yeah. Well, let me just back up just a bit and say, not that my approach, and we'll probably get to this, so I'm just going to touch on it now because it leads
Yeah,
into
sure.
your question. My approach really is different in the sense that I don't really focus on helping people to stop stuttering. I focus on helping them become excellent, superior speakers. And that's the difference. Rather than focusing on trying to stop something or fix something, I focus on how do you start something or how do you create something. So we focus on creating a fluent, smooth, confident speaking style rather than focusing on how do I not stutter. It's a
Right.
big difference, right? It's a huge difference.
It's a good
And
distinction. Very
yeah,
different.
yeah, your whole attitude, all of your energy is different when you're focusing on one as opposed to the other. So I can I can think back to the time where I felt free, and the way that you've worded your question is really, really relevant to how I felt. I was in seminary. I
Hmm.
was in seminary, and I had been working on my speech for, I think, a few years actually. And I remember this feeling like a big black wet blanket that I had been carrying around, like a weight was like lifted off of me. It was like a burden lifted off.
Right.
It was more than just a burden. It was like everything became lighter. It's like I could see. And I remember thinking to myself, man, I can do anything I want to do now. There's nothing I can't do because I'm free to say what I want when I want to
Right.
say it.
And that confidence just went right through the roof, obviously,
Yeah.
with that.
Right. Now, that doesn't mean, it didn't mean, and it doesn't mean that I never stutter. In fact, I don't call it stuttering. I say getting stuck because
Okay.
I don't consider myself a stutterer, right? That's another thing. You have to change your identity. You can't be a stutterer and an excellent speaker at the same time. You got to be one or the other.
And
So,
that's such a great, one of the reasons why I really wanted you on here is because looking at your work, the stuff that you do is great in that it's a lot of paradigm changing. People have their old way of thinking, and that a lot of that coincides with what I do and what I talk
mm,
about, because people who are overweight, people who they have what they call, I'm pretty sure you've been aware of seeing this, where you have like the yo-yo dieting effect, where somebody might be 250 or 300 pounds, then they get into the shape they're supposed to be in, and
mm,
then they go back up to 300 pounds. It's like, well,
mm,
what happened? And a lot of that is the mindset, is because the mindset wasn't correct before they started on their journey. And that's
ex-
basically what you're talking about in a sense with what you do. Am I right?
it's virtually exactly the same. What I do, you can apply it not just to speech, but any new habit, pattern of thinking, pattern of behavior, or skill you want to develop.
Mm.
You can use this approach. I mean, you might have to modify it a little, but you can essentially use the same approach. So yeah, exactly what you just said.
That that reminds me of, there's a quote. It's by what's his name? It's by Socrates. It's actually, the secret of change is to focus all of your energy not on fighting the old but creating the new, which is really relevant, obviously, to what you're talking about. Why don't you go into that a little bit? I mean, I have some questions for you. I kind of had an order for them, but now that we're talking about this, I guess we can kind of throw them around a little bit.
Sure.
Talking about replacement versus um, control, or a lot
Yeah.
of things that traditional methods might talk about, or deal in. Yours obviously is totally different, totally left field, so to speak. So can you go into a little bit about the replacement idea, and how that works?
Sure, sure. I wrote a little book on that. Actually, you can get a copy of it. You can get a copy from Amazon, Google Store, but you can also get a copy free if you find one of my videos where it says it's for free. But I'll leave a link for that. But essentially, and I'm glad you brought up the Socrates quote because I have that on my website in a few places, and it's in my book too. And it really does summarize it. It it boils down to this. Speech is a behavior. It's something that we do. So it doesn't matter who you are, you can't deny that speaking is something that we actually do. It's an action, series of actions,
Hmm.
it's a behavior that we perform. It's also a way of thinking, right? So when we are speaking, we're also thinking. And so it's a pattern of thought. Speaking is also a skill. That's why there's all training and schools to help people speak better, to improve their speech. So it's
Right.
a habit, it's a skill. It's also a way of thinking. If you think confidently, you'll speak more confidently. This is a somewhat of a different approach than speech therapy. Right?
Hmm.
They see it in a different way. So they might say it's a disfluency, maybe it's genetic, so forth. And I believe that it may be genetic for a lot of people, and it is a disfluency. However, if you look at it like a habit or a pattern and a skill, it means you can do something about it,
Right.
and
That's
that
great.
gives you hope. Because if you don't have hope, if you feel like I'm stuck with it, it's permanent, I can't change it, it's genetic, blah, 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 then you're not going to take the necessary steps for as long as you need to make the changes.
Right.
Does that make sense? I mean, that makes a big difference, right?
Oh, no, absolutely. Because what it does, I mean, from just how it is or how it sounds, it puts people in a state of learned helplessness. You know, so many people do that with weight loss as well, where they go back and forth so many times that failure becomes, like you said, like a habit. It becomes something that's learned. It becomes an approach that they can feel comfortable in, and they've learned to become helpless. And oh, this is just how I am. This is just who I am, and there's nothing I can do about it.
Exactly. So, what I've done is by looking at it like a skill, a habit, a pattern, we come up with a systematic approach for creating new habits, right? New patterns of thinking, new patterns of speaking, and for building the skill of speaking, right? Because if there's a skill, all you have to do is find someone else who's done it, who does it well, and you model them, you copy them, you learn the skill. Or you learn, this is what I need to do to build this skill. And then you perform it, repetition, over and over and over again. That's how we develop skills. That's how we learn stuff.
Right.
So basing it on learning and on habit creation, you can create a new speaking style that's not just one where you don't stutter, but it's one where you actually speak exceptionally well, better than the average person. That's what I do. That's my approach.
I would definitely have to, I would have to agree. I mean, I didn't know you obviously before you became a professional and was, going through what you were going through, but speaking with you and the few times that we've, spoken either through email and then of course speaking with each other on the phone or through video, you know, unless you told me your story, which you obviously have, but if I didn't know your story, I would have been curious as to what you were an expert in. I'd have thought maybe you were so it had something that had to do with coaching people on just talking or some kind of maybe personal development type of person. I would have never known that you come from that type of background and had those struggles early on before creating. So yeah, I mean, your style, obviously, your philosophy works, and it has worked a lot of with a lot of people. For those that are watching, we'll have his website and everything available so you can see. But if you go on YouTube and you just type Micheal Williams, a lot of his videos pop up, and you can see some of these before and afters. You can see some interviews he has with people who he's helped and coached, and it really is, it's fantastic. It really is. My question, which leads me into actually another question,
Mhm.
Micheal, since we're talking about replacing, therapists really focus on, in a way, kind of the negative, because your style is looking at it from a positive point of view. Is, hey, let's change the pattern. You're not what you've been portraying. You can be something different. Let's change the pattern. Let's change the paradigm. Let's create something new. A lot of therapists look at you as you got the issue, you got the problem. Let's figure out how to fix it, how to control it. And they kind of have a little bit of a negative connotation to it. So is your style or methodology of replacing, is that something that is, what's the word I'm looking for? Is it something that can be consistent? Is it something that can be sustainable, rather? Can somebody who follows your program, follows your coaching, really feel confident that the idea of replacement rather than fixing is something that's sustainable over their
Yeah.
lifetime?
Yeah, that's a great question. People always wondering, people always wonder, okay, this guy's, he's come up with this new approach, and is this actually going to work? Do people regress after they go through his programs and stuff? And it's not about my approach and my program. It's neuroscience. It's human development, right?
Mm.
So you got to ask yourself the question, if I learn a new skill, is it sustainable? How do I sustain a new skill that I learned? If I learn a new language, how do I sustain that? This is almost the same. It's not exact. It's almost the same. If I learn a new language, how do I become super fluent at the language? And I use Spanish as an example. I can speak a little Spanish, but if I don't do it a lot, I lose some of it. If I do it a lot, then it becomes very natural to me. So learning skills, learning languages, habits. Habits are always there. The connections are always there. You can't really disconnect it. But you can create another habit that's stronger, that's more dominant, so that the old one becomes so weak that it doesn't really bother you anymore, that it doesn't come up. Now, it can be triggered. It can come up. But if the new one is so dominant, it will hardly ever come up. So that's why I say sometimes it still gets stuck. But so does everyone else.
Right.
Everyone gets stuck sometimes. So
Absolutely.
I'm no different than anyone else. So I hope that kind of answered your question in terms of, yeah.
No, it did.
So
it did.
It's not me. It's not my approach. It's science.
Right.
It has to work. It's not a matter of, will this work and can I sustain this? Can you learn a new skill? Can you create a new habit? And the same ways you do that, and the same ways you sustain that, is the same way you sustain a new speaking style. You get to the place where it becomes natural, it becomes the way you speak, and then you don't have to think about it anymore.
I like that, the way you talked about that. That was really good. You say you look at it as getting stuck, where somebody who maybe doesn't understand the philosophy that you come from, they say that they stutter. But yet people who would be considered fluent, people who obviously don't stutter, I guess, on a normal basis,
Right.
They would never consider themselves to be stuttering as a stutterer when they trip over their words, when in actuality it's all the same thing because they get stuck. I mean, my personality type is I'm thinking about 500 things at the same time, and I want to go and ask you certain questions, and I start tripping over my own words because I'm trying to say all these different things, but I don't consider myself somebody who stammers or stutters. And that's a great idea that you say somebody who comes from that background shouldn't consider themselves that either, because it's just a talking style. I'm sure utilizing your replacement, if I was to try to bring my energy down a little bit and try to get more grounded and think out more of my questions, then I wouldn't even do the little bit of tripping up that I do. So that's a great way to look at it.
The truth is, people who have come from a background of stuttering can actually become superior speakers. And in some ways, when it comes to speaking, superior thinkers, not in everything, but when it comes to speaking. Why? Because they've had to think about, anticipate their words. They've had to go out and say, okay, am I gonna have to say this word? If I do, then I gotta switch it out with something else. So their minds are going so fast, faster than what most people's minds have to go, because they're thinking about words and switching out, that you can use that process as a skill. Because now when I'm speaking, if I'm speaking to an audience, I'm able to do things that I wouldn't have been able to do had I not gone through this. You also have to work on your speech, which most people, or many people, don't necessarily have to do. They choose to do it, but they don't have to do it. As a person who has stuttered and you want to become an excellent speaker, you have to work on your speech, which means you become very skilled at it.
That's a great point. Yeah, I never
So
looked at it that way.
You have an advantage. I mean, you have an advantage, and you actually become a better speaker than average.
That's a good way. See, you're turning what some might consider to be a negative, and obviously flipping that over, and that's a very valid valid reasoning for it to be positive. I mean, I never thought about it that way. And you know what? For a lot of people who are fluent, they like anything else in life, we take it for granted. So we kind of are all over the place. But when you really are thinking about everything that you're going to say, and I'm assuming you end up being more eloquent. Your words will be well chosen, and your point will get across. You'll have a lot of brevity going on, so you'll just be a more concise, powerful speaker. So that's fantastic. Let me ask you this question.
Yeah.
trying to just look at it how most people look at it, because coming from what I do with Scratch Health, when I used to run a class, Scratch Health class, ran it for about a year, and I did it as I wasn't really interested. My business is I like to be online, and I wanted to run it as a class and see what it was like. And we had 15, 20 people that were showing up, and so it was like my own experiment. And one of the things was, I mean, not even 2 weeks into the program, I mean, my first 10, 15 people, the first questions they ask before anything else is, well, how fast? How fast? It's basically, that's how it starts. How fast can I see? How fast can I go from being obese to becoming, if they're female, to looking like Jennifer Lopez? Or how fast can I go, if they're a guy, from being 50 pounds overweight to looking like, I don't know, whoever, Arnold Schwarzenegger, or somebody who's high, seriously fit. And that's because that's that microwave society mentality. And I'm sure you get a lot of that similar questions. So I just wanted to ask you, for those who are listening and saying, you know what, Michael's, I like what he's talking about. I want to get into his program. I want to get into his coaching. I'm going to buy his books, whatever the case is. And they have an expectation. So what would that what should their level of expectation be for progress with your program and coaching, as far as being reasonable with getting real results?
Well, Nicholas, you just touched on one of I mean, I'm tickled pink to answer this question, because it's a huge, major issue when it comes to people who struggle with their speech. I mean, it's huge, huge. Man, I try to actually discourage people from buying my stuff or from getting into the coaching. I try to discourage them by saying, this is going to take longer than you expect. It's going to be harder than you expect. And you're going to have to work really hard for like a long time. Now, if you follow exactly what I say, or even something close to it, you're going to see some initial successes. And within a relatively short period of time, you're going to get some pretty incredible results. But studies show that it takes between about 18 days and about 260 some days to form a new habit, depending on what the habit is. So that's about 8 months. This is not going to happen in 3 days. Like, there's some courses that say we're going to teach you and you're going to stop stuttering in 3 days. Maybe for some people. But for the average person, it's going to take you several months, maybe even a year. I have a program that lasts about 90 days. Sometimes we go 4 months. And I do that because I know it takes about this long with intensive coaching for you to see like incredible results. I mean, people do things like win Toastmasters events while they're in my coaching, some of them being severe stutterers. They actually go out to win. So I know how long it takes. So I tell people, if you've been stuttering for 5 years, 10 years, 50, 20, 30 years, why would you think that you can go out and do something that's going to take you days or weeks or even a couple of months?
Man, if I had an answer for that, man, you know how many times that people said the same thing? They've been overweight, obese for 25 years, and they want me to make them look like a stud in about 6 weeks.
And
Unbelievable.
sustain it. I mean, you might be able to get some results quickly, but it's a matter of, can you sustain it for the long term, right?
Absolutely.
So I tell them, look, you're going to have to work for a few months at least intensively to get the ball rolling, to get the momentum going, and you're going to see some great results. Then you might plateau for a while, and then you just keep working at it, because it's a skill. You're building a skill. You're not trying to get rid of stuttering. You're building a skill, which then diminishes the stuttering, right, by building the skill. And you just got to say, I want to work at this as long as I need to get to where I want to go.
Right.
So I try to set it up.
That brings me, because the way you answer things, it just opens up so many questions. One of for you, if you don't know, Scratch actually stands for systematic, consistent results achievable through correct habits. And one of the things that I find, going back to what you said, which is it sustainable? Is it something that you can maintain and obviously do for the rest of your life and not necessarily need somebody there? My whole philosophy of teaching, when I teach, is I try to go kind of against the grain a little bit. My thing is, I want to show you not only how to lose the weight, but to do it in such a way that you won't need me there. You don't need a personal coach all the time. I mean, of course, in the beginning, first couple of months, first couple of years, however long it takes for that person, but something that someone that could use it on their own and actually change their mindset. And I wanted to ask you, from your opinion, your experiences, what you've seen with all the clients that you've been helping. For me personally, I've noticed that the shift from being overweight to becoming either fit or just healthy and lean, doesn't necessarily mean they have to look like any kind of a model, but just actually being healthier, is more of a mental shift. And some of the models that I have and the philosophies that I have is I focus more on teaching people how to shift their mindset well before we jump on a mat to start doing physical exercise, and well before I start talking to them about proper food combining and things of that nature. Do you find with the coaching that you've done and replacement, as you call it, that a lot of that is consistent with what we just talked about, meaning that it's also a mindset primarily before they even get started with the skills that you're going to teach them?
Absolutely, man. In fact, it's funny that you asked that. I'm working on a new program right now. It's still my Pro 90 speech system, but it's called the Mental Trainer, and it's primarily a passive learning program. And basically, all the person has to commit to do is just listen to it. And the reason that I decided to focus on this, because the other program contains things to help a person change their mindset as well as their physical speech. This program is primarily designed to help them change their mindset, their attitudes, their thoughts, patterns of thinking, and so forth. And the reason why is that people can attest that when they feel confident, there's been times people who stutter, even severely. In fact, I'll give you two specific instances. People who stutter, they felt confident and they've been fluent, like instantly. How is that? How is that someone can feel a certain way and all of a sudden they've been stuttering for 10, 15, 50 years, 60 years? I have a lady who's 68 years old. She was fluent for a week after watching my videos.
Wow. Is that the lady Joyce?
Yes. Before
Okay.
we started coaching, she became fluent for about a week because of a change in her mindset. So I started really putting some more thought into that, and it goes to exactly what you said. Uh, a lot of this has to do with self-concept, so how we see ourselves, what we believe about ourselves, and our possibilities. It's all tied to our brain essentially. Everything comes from our brain, from our neural network, from the neural pathways, from memories and patterns of, okay, if I'm in this situation, I'm going to eat this much, or if I'm doing this, then I'm going to eat this. So it's all about patterns recognition, how the brain works. If you want to look at it from a more psychological perspective, a lot of it has to do with self-concept. So the way we see ourselves is the way we're going to perform, the way we're going to be. Therefore, you don't identify yourself as a stutterer, or else you're going to continue to be a stutterer. You have to first start to identify yourself as an excellent speaker, and then you do the work to back that up. You also have to develop a sense of confidence, and a lot of different ways to do that. Confidence, esteem, and so forth, which can immediately begin to impact your speech or your behavior. And once your behavior is affected, I call this the confidence competence cycle. Either one can come first. You can increase your confidence and it will improve your competence, your behavior, your performance. Or you can improve your performance and it'll improve your confidence. But they both cycle and one includes the other. So if I feel more confident, I'm going to speak better. And if I see myself speaking better, I'm going to feel better. If I feel better, I'm going to speak. So it goes like that.
It's a great loop. It's a constantly moving loop that's just moving towards betterment, which is fantastic. So a lot of that is just like you said, the concept of self. Not to get too heady, but we could in a situation like this, because dealing with the mind it gets pretty deep. So you're saying that, and I've seen this from my own experiences. You're saying that basically somebody kind of sees themselves, or they change the blueprint of who they believe that they are. And then by kind of stepping into this new blueprint, they change, or can change potentially instantly, like you said, right there on the spot, because they've kind of stepped into this new person or a new idea of who they think they are, and now that thing is gone.
I love the way you said that, and I meant to give you two instances. One is Joyce, and another is another one of my clients who I did before video for as well. I'm still working with him. He's getting a lot better now. Both of them, just from watching videos, became fluent for about a week. Now, Joyce stuttered for over 60, let's just say 65 years. She's 68 now, so basically, while she can speak. This other guy stuttered for maybe 20 years. And so by them feeling confident, by them having hope that they actually could, by them stepping into this new belief, instantly their speech improved. Now, it didn't last because they didn't have the blueprint to continue,
Right.
right? Which is what I'm giving them now. So, yes, you are exactly right.
It's funny, a lot of what we both do have a lot of similarities, which is why it's so easy to just talk with you about these different things. I mean, I've seen that in my own experience where I have a phrase or a quote that I always tell when I had my classes and I was running the classes physically and I had 15 people showing up, what have you, and I would tell them that first day is that losing weight will be the easiest thing that you've ever done in your life. Believing you can will be the hardest.
Yeah.
And a lot of that comes sure it's the same. It's absolutely the same with you. And I've come across people who are 5'5", female, and instead of being 140 or 135 like they should be, or whatever it is that they should be approximately, they might be 250 or 225, and then something happens, like you said, something happens, and it's kind of, for me, I've noticed in health and in fitness, a lot of it is visual impact. And actually, it's funny that you said you're working on a program, because I got my DVDs that are going to be coming out within about 6 to 8 weeks, and I'm
Okay.
also working on a new program that has to do with similarly just talking about the mental and how you can change instantly. And I call it visual impact, and it has a whole name. But the idea is some of these people, um, they struggled with their weight for X amount of years, and then something happened, like somebody passed away, a loved one passed away, or they saw someone that they were close to go through some traumatic situation, like maybe have a heart attack, go through diabetes to the point where maybe they get their limbs cut off or something like that, and they were there to see it, meaning they were by the hospital side. They saw this whole process happen, and they
Hmm.
went through it themselves, and they got to see it. And it was as soon as they saw that happen, that connection, as you said, clicks. And without even me, some of these people were in my class, dropped out of my class because of family emergencies, never came back to my class. And I saw them 4 months later, they dropped 60, 70 pounds. And I'm like,
Yeah.
well, how the hell did you do that? You said you couldn't do it 30 years. And they said, oh, well, you know what, my sister, my cousin, this person, that person, I saw what happened to them, and just something for me made me never want to be like that again. So
Exactly.
it's pretty powerful, man. It's
It
definitely
is.
powerful.
It is, man. It's very, very powerful, and that's why I'm deciding to spend some more time on that, because there are some people that are still going to need the rest of it, but there are going to be a lot of people that can just do this one thing, and it can make an immediate and a long-term impact on their speech and on their lives.
Right. I want to jump back into some of the questions. I know we've skipped all over the place, but I want to just kind of jump back into one of them, because I just want to find out what your approach, if you even do any of this at all.
Hmm.
I find that a lot of your processes are psychological. You talk about the connections and replacement, paradigm shifting, things like that, which is phenomenal. I have a personal belief that mind and the body, they work in unison, and for it to work in unison, or in other words, to get the best results, they should work in unison. And
Hmm.
I just wanted to find out, with your style of coaching, with what you've created, how do you get, or do you get the body involved in any kind of way through either kind of some kind of exercise or kind of movement as they're doing their replacement techniques and strategies and skills
Hmm.
to help them with their fluency? Is there anything that's involved with the body?
Yes, absolutely. I'm glad you mentioned that too. In one of my programs, 21 Steps to Start Speaking More Smoothly and Confidently, I go through just 21 steps, and a good part of it has to do with health, has to do with exercise,
Mm,
has to do with what you eat, when you eat. Um, and so, yes, exercising, meditation, breathing, to learn how to control your breathing, which can be a huge problem for some people that struggle with this. So learning how to control your breathing, learning how to calm down and be relaxed, which also
Right.
is related to the foods that we eat, um,
Yes.
alcohol consumption, smoking cigarettes, and so forth. I do like to drink wine. I'll just tell you that, but I mean,
Yeah.
I don't,
So do I. We're gonna have to get together sometime.
I don't overconsume or whatever. But, but if you are out there and you're doing a lot of this stuff, you're eating the wrong foods, it affects your emotions. It affects how you feel. It affects how you handle stress if you're not getting enough rest or if you don't exercise. Now, the other thing that I do that's more closely related, though, to my style, my approach is some people who stutter, they use their bodies in ways that they don't want to. They slap their knees, their eyes do certain things, their mouths do certain things, their heads do certain things because their body's gotten used to trying to get the words out, and that's how their bodies have responded by doing lots of like weird looking things to get
Right.
the words out. They stomp their feet, all kinds of stuff. So what I do is something called somatic assistance. It's nothing more than using your body, just like I've been doing, to help you speak. It's
Mm.
also a very good style of speaking. If you see good speakers, great speakers, you're going to see they use their bodies.
Right.
They use their eyebrows. They use their face. They smile. They use their heads, just like you just shook your head. They use their hands, right? They're not just sitting there stiff with no expression, just talking. That would be boring, right? And and they also use their vocal cords by inflecting their words up and down. They don't just talk monotone like this. They articulate. They use their mouth. So they're using their body. So what I teach people to do is use your body, and I give them a model. Use your body in these specific ways, and what you'll be doing is when you use your body, you're also kind of redistributing and releasing some of the stress. Because sometimes even people who don't stutter, when they have to public speak, they're so tight and tense. There's a lot of stress built up,
Right.
and what
Right.
happens is that fight or flight part of our brain begins to take over, and the part where you're able to think clearly, cognitive, shuts down. Because at that time, you don't need to be analyzing things. You just need to move. You need to get out. You need to run, right? So
Right.
that's what takes over, and that's why the speech just kind of clamps up. They can't get anything out. So when you start using your body, you start moving, you're actually relaxing yourself. You're using your body rhythmically to kind of help orchestrate your words. You're releasing stress as opposed to building it up by being tight and tense. So that's this very specific way that we use our body to help us speak more rhythmically and also help relieve and reduce stress.
That's man. There's so many things that match up with each other. I got to talk about this real fast because just the terminology that you're using. Number one, you're saying bringing themselves down, like calming down. Now, what I teach in my style is Scratch Health. I kind of gave you what the acronym was for Scratch. The word health is an acrostic, and it stands for H2O, energy, air, load factor, traffic dynamics, and Herculean power. And I have a whole reasoning between each of these things. But the reason I bring that up is because one of the things that I talk to people about, especially when it comes to losing weight, is something that's called getting grounded. Are you familiar with this term?
When you explain it, I probably will be, but I know I've heard it before, but I want you to explain it because
Okay.
yeah.
And hey, maybe I might be able to give my little 2 cents. It might help you with some further programs.
Absolutely.
But there's something that's called grounding, and it's been around for, I'm not the one who created it. It's just that a lot of people aren't aware of it. So it's been around for quite some time. What grounding is allowing you to pretty much, as you said, calm yourself down, but by actually using science to do it, by using the earth, by getting grounded. Like, when you have a grounded wire, you
Mm-hmm.
can't put certain things because you have to get the wire grounded, or else you can have an explosion in your house or something like that. But
Mm-hmm.
it's a funny metaphor, but the same thing can happen internally. If you don't get yourself grounded, your emotions can flare out of control. You can lose your mind. You see people, just kind of lose it because they're not able to bring it down and get grounded. And so to not get into the whole scientific part of it, but basically everything that's not a part of the ground on Earth is positively charged. Everything that's in the air, energy is positively charged. The Earth is negatively charged. So what they do is there's a synergistic balance there that nature provides that helps them to kind of like yin and yang. It helps them to balance each other out, and you get that level-headedness. So how do you use this? Well, one of the things that I find for people who are struggling with weight, and this is one of the strategies I use in some of my coaching programs, etc., is because weight loss is a very emotional process. Just as I'm sure is somebody going through stuttering and stammering or getting stuck and trying to figure out how to replace it. It's very emotional, and it can. And once your once your emotions get out of control, you lose. You can't do anything. Whether it's speaking or physical, or it just lose it all. So what I would tell people is when they start to become overwhelmed, is what the word I was looking for, overwhelmed with the idea that, man, they're 275 pounds and they want to be 150 pounds. And it just seems like such an enormous task that they can never achieve.
Mm-hmm.
When I start to see that they're going into that place in their head where it's becoming impossible, I try to help them become grounded. And one of the ways I used to do that in the school that I had was I would have them take their socks and shoes off and actually put their feet on the concrete or on the grass nearby. And it's been proven through these little meters and some other stuff, and you can go into do your own research on it. I don't want to take up too much of the interview time going into it, but it's been proven that when you stand on earth or on concrete, anything that's related to the ground that's negatively charged, it, number one, reduces inflammation in you. So if you suffer from any kind of ailments, it's going to actually reduce inflammation. But at the same time, it also helps to naturally calm the body down, slows your heart rate. It brings down your emotions, which is energy. It's all energy in our body, right? Which is what's the way the emotion kind of comes from here, and that's what happens to people say, I'm losing my mind. They use these words. They don't even realize how real the metaphor is. Or you ever heard somebody say something like, man, I can't grab a hold of my emotion. My emotions are out there. They're in the sky. They use all these terminologies that they're explaining because they don't really know how to explain what they're feeling, but in actuality, their energy is up there. It's really in their head instead of in their heart or in their stomach or where they need to control it. So by getting grounded, you bring the energy from out of your head and from in the sky, and you bring it back into you, and you finally find yourself. I guess would be the proper way to say it. You find yourself, you know where you are, you're more in tune of who you are at the time. You get your breathing, which is like you just talked about, right? You get the breathing going, and your whole body just almost like a computer, you just hear go, and you just kind of get that shut down. And when you get grounded for 10-15 minutes, you also notice that the craziness that happens in your mind, the mental talk that we all have, that slows as well. And so it helps to, depending on how you want to use it and for what you're using it for, and obviously we have different professions, but how you would use it versus how I would use it, but it still provides a tremendous benefit for people if you know how to put it in a program that can help somebody to use it. So
that's very interesting. Have I heard it before? It sounds like something I've heard before, but not in that level of detail. So in a sense, it's kind of new to me. So that is something that I'm definitely
if you want to do your own research on it, you would look under as grounding, or you would look it up under as earthing. Is kind of the new terminology for it. Earthing.
Interesting.
Coming together with earth. And like I said, I don't want to take too much time on it, but it has a myriad of benefits. And I mean, it's literally 10-15 different types of benefits that it can do for you. It's even been shown, and I'll move on to the air part that you just talked about. It's even been shown people who've had cancer, who have had growths, maybe they're not cancerous, but growths in the body, by getting grounded for 10, 15, 20 minutes a day, it's been shown in some studies that the growths have actually reduced themselves. And the reason for this is because we spend so much time, especially like you and I, because of what we do, our online business, we spend a lot of time in front of these computers. And these things are, they're emanating this blue screen energy that we're getting bombarded with. And obviously, we don't see it, but as we work and toil through the night on our websites and programs, we're getting hit with all this energy. And it's negative energy, or it's positive energy, rather, that's not doing positive things to us. And so if you don't have anything to counteract the effects of all this radiation that we're getting hit with through our iPads and our computers, it can actually do some internal damage over a long period of time. And by getting grounded, by getting involved in earthing, you actually bring that to a negative state where you get yourself more balanced. So just something you might want to consider looking into.
I will, most definitely. That's very interesting. I'm glad you shared that with me.
No, no problem. And so if anybody out there gets a program from Michael in the next 6 months to a year and he's talking about grounding, we all know where it came
You
from
know,
now. So
yeah, I'm gonna give you credit. I'm gonna say I learned this from the guy that interviewed me named Nicholas Roman. I'm gonna say, you know what? I came up with this new concept called, and I'll rename it to something else now. I'm just playing. No, that's
That's
very
right.
good though, man. Thank you.
No
Thank you.
problem. And the other thing you talked about is breathing. And I just wanted to touch on that. I don't want to go into another rant on how I went into grounding just now, but breathing, from my own studies, I found that it's funny that you say the people who stammer, stutter, get stuck, they have an issue with breathing. It's not just them. I'm here to tell. So if people like that are listening right now and they're looking for hope and looking for ways to get better, it's not just you particular type of people who have those issues that have an issue breathing. Studies are showing that over 80% of pretty much Americans breathe incorrectly.
Mm,
So it's not just any one particular type of people. It's people on a whole are
mm,
breathing incorrectly because our lifestyles are so out of whack today. We live such a sedentary lifestyle that the stuff that we're naturally uh, that's naturally instinctual, we're even forgetting a lot of that stuff. Something
mm,
like if you look at a newborn baby, in my coaching program, I talk about in my DVD program, people ask me, well, how do I know how to breathe properly? And I'm one, I like a lot of these heady ideas, but I'm also somebody who likes simple things. I want to know exactly how you can understand it within 5 minutes. Like explain it to me like I'm a 5-year-old. That's how I like things to be taught to me, because
yeah,
I can grasp it and get moving on to taking action.
right.
And so one of the things I tell people is, for those of us who have kids, like I do, and others, millions of others, just look at a baby when they breathe. If you look at it when they breathe, number one, their mouths are closed. They don't breathe with their mouth opens. Most people today are mouth breathers. That's one of the worst things you can do. And I'm sure
Hmm.
it's probably the worst thing you can do, whether or not you're somebody who's out of shape or somebody who gets stuck often with their speech. Mouth breathing is bad for any kind of person. And you look at babies and they breathe through their nose and they control the breath through their nose. It's interesting because humans are the only animal that breathe through their mouth when they sleep. Every other animal on earth breathes through their nose, and it's because it's a learned pattern, because of
Mm,
incorrect habits, like you said, with speech and as a skill set, et cetera, et cetera. We learn these things, and then we end up doing them. So most people are breathing correctly. Babies breathe through their nose, and then when you look, their bellies kind of look like a little accordion.
mhm,
You see the breath going in and out of their belly. You see it expanding and contracting. Whereas with most people, when they breathe, you see their chest start to go in and out more than their actual belly, because they got that
mhm.
shallow breath going on. And I'm pretty
Exactly.
sure that has a lot to do with speech. I know for me personally, how long have I been talking now? I've been speaking probably about 14 years in my prior profession. Well, not profession, but I guess business, you would call it profession. I used to
Mhm,
be in finance, and I would speak and I would do seminars for people. And sometimes I would be in front of as many as my biggest was 600 or 700 people I
mhm,
spoke in front of. And, in those days, forget about it. It was like I might as well have sliced my wrist and been doing that. And and even me at the time, freezing up on stage, because it's one thing when you're dealing with people one on one and offering services and helping them and being a top salesperson. It's another thing now when you're teaching 600 people or 500 people and you got to get your message across.
exactly. Exactly.
And I would be on stage and I would do the Ralph Cramden where you're doing the humana humana humana. They were like, get this guy off stage. He's terrible. Why is he up there? One of those. But through getting involved with health as a hobby initially and then making it more into a business, I started to learn things like the proper breathing. And when you start to breathe through your nose and use your nose as the control point, you're able to do a lot more things on a fitness level as well as on a grounding level, because of the what they call reverse pressure from your lungs. It's an interesting study. I don't want to get into that too,
Mm,
but it just talks about how when you breathe through your nose, because it's a smaller air passage, there's more pressure in your lungs. So it's more of a workout. And through that
mhm,
working out, when you work out, your muscles get relaxed and you get relaxed. So
mhm,
when you're breathing properly, especially through your nose, you're actually relaxing yourself more than being a mouth breather, sucking all that air in, getting
mm.
hyperventilated, and then getting stuck.
Exactly.
So now that you spoke about that, I wanted you to kind of elaborate on that as far as your experiences.
I figured out the nose breathing. maybe a little bit through martial arts when I was growing up, but more so when I would run. I would
Hmm.
breathe through my nose, not through my mouth, and I could run longer. Breath was more controlled. So I kind of figured out that. Then, through studies later on, uh, I don't focus. See, a lot of programs focus on breathing. A lot of the newer programs that deal with speech actually focus on breathing. I don't, because I think that when you model someone else, and I've seen this happen, time and time again, you model someone else that speaks well, you will naturally figure out how to breathe right. You'll figure
Hmm.
out how to breathe correctly, just like a child learns how to speak. And so people are like, well, should I focus on my breathing? I'm like, no, just model this video. And what happens is they figure out the right way to breathe. Uh,
That's it. You said modeling now, I want to say half a dozen times through this hour talk.
yeah,
I want you to, if you can, without I don't know how you feel about giving away some of your tactics and secrets. I don't want you to. I mean,
doesn't
obviously, you
matter.
have programs and stuff for that, so I don't want you to give away the farm. But if you can kind of just let us all know about what more detail. What does that really mean when you model? I mean, I know what it means, but I really like the people to know what it means when you're
Yeah.
modeling somebody, and then more importantly, how does somebody even how does somebody even pick the right type of person to model? Is there a certain person that you look for that maybe matches your personality? Like, how do they go through the process of
Yeah.
picking a model?
I'll tell you what I did. I'll tell you what I advise my coaching clients to do, and then I'll tell you what some other people have done. I modeled two people. One's Brian Tracy, and this was back when he was younger. His style's a little different now, but and a guy named Charles Stanley, who's a
Oh,
minister,
okay.
because I mean, I still am in ministry. So when I would preach or teach in a church atmosphere, I would think of myself as Charles Stanley because that
Okay.
was my model.
That's
And I
good.
studied him. I listened to him. I watched him. I internalized everything that he did and said. So, got to find a model who's consistent uh, philosophically, personality wise. Well, his style was a little different than mine, but he was very congruent with me. So that's why I liked him. Brian Tracy, very calm, wasn't all over the place and stuff. And so that fit my personality type because I couldn't model someone who was super charismatic because it wouldn't have been me. But I
Right.
could model Brian Tracy because the way he spoke just fit the way I wanted to speak. So I just copied him literally, like some of his phrases, how he used his hands, he used his
Right.
face, show everything, just copied it. And eventually I developed my own style. But so modeling, yeah, you wanted to say something. What?
No, I was just saying,
Oh,
it's funny that you say that because I can actually, now that you mentioned that, because I know those speakers, I've listened to them as well many times. I can see the link of
yes.
Brian Tracy.
You
I've
can
listened
see.
to many of his seasons. I can see that now that you've mentioned it.
Yeah, exactly.
That's great.
It's because I spent literally thousands of hours listening to him, probably less watching, but still a lot of time watching, listening, until and then doing it, actually going out, spending, maybe hundreds or thousands of hours speaking, practicing and speaking. So modeling is probably the foundation of my program. Now, how do you pick a model? That was one of your questions. And then I said that I would tell you what I do with my clients.
Hmm.
You need to pick a model who you feel like is going to be consistent with your personality, but might stretch you a little bit. Because if you're really, really super laid back, then you don't want somebody that's boring, right? Because that's not going to stretch you to the place where you need to be. So they need to be consistent with your personality type, your communication style, but they need to also push you a little bit beyond, right?
Hmm.
That's very, very important. Um, you need to like their style and you need to like what they're saying because you're going to spend a lot of time studying them. If you
Okay.
don't like, you might like their style, but you don't like what they're saying, you're not going to spend as much time as you need to studying them.
Well, that makes sense. That makes sense.
For my coaching clients, I have them model me. And if they can or if they don't want to, I won't coach them because I tried to coach people and say, pick your own model. It doesn't work. It just does not work. So one of my first clients said, why don't you just have people model you? I said, okay. I don't necessarily think I'm like the best speaker in the world, but she said, well, if they're watching you and if they like, what you're saying, they probably won't mind modeling you. So to
Right.
make it easier, I tell my clients, model me, study this video, memorize it, practice presenting it, and that's how you're going to create your new speaking style, because all the skills I teach, I use. So and you get to see me when we're coaching, and it works every single time. For
Beautiful
people that,
system.
yeah, for people that I don't coach, many of them pick another model. Unfortunately, some of them never find a model or find one model, and so they don't get the benefits of modeling because they're like, oh, I picked this guy, but then I didn't, and then I tried to pick this guy. So that's why I say, if you can put up with the way that I speak, or if you like the way I speak, just go ahead and model me, because I have, hundreds of audio, hundreds of video, and it just works. It works. You don't have to model me forever. Just model me for until you create a new speaking style.
Right. And that's a good point, because that kind of goes for almost anything. When you're creating your own style in anything, you're getting started in that part, you tend to copy everybody who's around, who's the best at that particular thing. And then over time, you end up creating your own little piece out of that, a piece of everybody until you make your own. So that's a
Exactly.
great idea, because you know what? Hey, start with at least you're starting with somebody that style works. So it's almost
Exactly.
like a guarantee. You get
Exactly.
that guarantee, and then you get the guarantee till you get to the point where you are fluent enough to that. You know what? They don't got Forget Michael Williams. I'm tired of that guy. I've heard some of his audios. you know? I don't want to see his face anymore. I'm done with him. Let me go speak or create another model, and they'll create their own.
And that's yeah. The purpose is not for them to speak like me. It's for them to create a new speaking style,
Right.
right? So this is just a vehicle for them to do that. And there was something else I wanted to say about what you were saying about this. Modeling is the fastest way to create a new speaking style, or to do anything else, really. If you're learning to play baseball, learning to play the piano, the fastest way is to model someone who does it well, because you literally borrow their style. And we have certain neurons that they talk about called mirror neurons. So if you watch something or watch somebody long enough, it actually makes a mental impression. It makes an impression on us, and we can more easily pattern ourselves after that person if we study them. We listen
Right.
to them and we watch them. So
Makes
modeling is
sense.
the fastest way. If somebody wants to get the fluency, pretend to speak like someone else,
Mm.
and keep pretending until it becomes natural.
Until
And
you're not pretending anymore.
so you're not pretending,
Right.
and you'll
Right.
be fluent just as quickly as you can do that.
Yeah, your mind is building all those little neural synapses or neural connections, and firing off. People forget that. It's like what I tell people when I'm showing them a lot of the movements that I do. I don't really call them exercises. I call them natural movements and other things. And people might think, oh well, it's just a play on words. He's trying to be cutesy with it, but it's not. It's because it really is non-traditional style working out and things that I do with people. So when they do it, they feel a little awkward at first.
Mm.
But it's like you said. It's those people don't realize that you got these motor engrams that we're all learning through our central nervous system, firing off and taking information and making these new paths in our mind and in our brain and in our body. And the
Mhm.
more that you keep greasing that groove, the deeper it gets. And I always tell people that's why practicing anything correctly is more important than just practicing a lot, because of the fact that I forget the exact number, but I think it's something like if you do something right and you practice this movement, whether it's a body movement or a speaking style, whatever it is, but you do this thing. If it's exercising, let's say you're doing bicep curls in a certain manner, you only have to do it. I think it's uh, 300 to 500 times the right way, and it becomes like a neural connected part of your nervous system,
Mm.
and boom, you got it. You're good to go. But if you do it wrong, to relearn it and then get the right habit, it takes something like 1,500 movements and repetitions before you can get that going on. So it's
And
just less work if you do it the right way.
exactly, and that's why creating a new speaking style is so challenging, because they've now learned the wrong way, if you will, the wrong
Mhm.
way, and now they got to go back and learn on top of, while they're speaking every day, they got to build this new neural pathway on top of the old one, right? And so it takes that much longer, that much more effort because the old way is there. So it's exactly what you just said. But
Absolutely.
it's possible. I see people do it. It just takes effort and it takes desire.
Can't have that microwave mentality. You gotta really be willing to put in the work, get the
Yeah.
results. I mean, it's just the way it is. Sorry guys. I mean, I know I got experts on here all the time, but ain't none of them telling you that there's a fast way to get to wherever they've gotten to. So you can
Yeah.
forget it.
That's right. That's right.
We're actually, you know what? I think you're the first person. I ran over time with you. I want to be respectful of your time, so I'm not gonna keep it too much longer.
Sure.
But I would like to ask you, well, one more question and have you kind of
Hmm.
talk about where people can actually reach your information and reach your coaching and everything. But one of the things that I was just curious in finding out your perspective on is, are you familiar with or have you heard of anything, or not anything, but have you heard of the style or the study of bioenergetics at all?
I saw that, and I gotta be honest, I don't believe I have. It just doesn't ring a bell. Now, if you explained it, I might have heard of something like it, or I may have heard of whatever you explained and not the name of it, because I've heard
You,
a lot
you've
of
probably
stuff.
heard it because being in the coaching field as you are, I'm sure it had to have come around. Maybe it's not spoken upon as bioenergetics. Things
Yeah.
change names, but I really wanted your opinion on what you think about this particular area as it pertains to getting stuck and fluency. But basically, what it is, it was developed by a gentleman named Willem Reich. So if you want to, do the research on it, I think it's Wilhem, something like that. Willem Reich, Reich. But he created this style. Not the style, but he created this study. And what it was he started to realize through his own studies and dealing with people and clients and customers, etc., that emotions get trapped. When we're in a very high emotional state, it can get trapped within the body. And what happens is, because emotion is nothing more than energy in motion. So what happens is he goes, he kind of explains it like when you have a little kid, they have a temper tantrum, right? They'll be on the swings, you say no, they have a major to-do fit, and they
Mhm.
go for it. I mean, they cry, they scream, they go, their arms are everywhere, but then it's out of them, and that's why, 30 seconds later, they can be talking to somebody else and drinking a juice, and like nothing ever happened.
Mhm.
And one of the things that it kind of talks about is that kids have the unbelievable ability to let the emotion go through them, experience it, and then release it.
Mhm.
But as we grow into adults, we don't do that, because so people are just so, people are people, and we
Mhm.
try to internalize things, especially with a lot of our social cultures. Guys got to be tough, guys can't cry, women got to be a certain way. So all these rules that we set up for ourselves,
Mhm.
what ends up happening if there's something traumatic that happens when you're young or teenage years, you get this major emotional traumatic situation and you don't release it properly, it can actually get trapped, well, his theory is anyway, within the muscle.
Mhm.
And you can get situations where you've got, a tight trap or tight muscles, and you don't know why you can't get rid of these ailments. And his theory, and there's been some people that really believe in this and go through, and there's a whole process of it, that what you have to do to release the trauma of this emotional burden that you've had, and you may not know what it is by releasing the muscles so that the emotion can flow through you and be released. And so
Interesting.
one of the ideas was, I was just wondering, in your opinion, knowing a little bit about William Reich's ideas, do you think that it's possible, or at least from what you've seen, that something when happened, maybe the traumatic or high emotion when somebody was little, and maybe, just maybe, some of this emotional energy, this negative energy, never gets released and can potentially get stuck, in your throat? Because in my experience, like I said, my brother stutters, and one of the things that he gets is this part here, where it's like his throat and the I don't know what you call this here, but your I'm drawing a blank right now, but you know what I'm
Yeah.
talking about.
Yeah.
Larynx. I'm
Not the
not just.
larynx, right? It might be the larynx, but
It might be
yeah.
the larynx, but this right here gets tight, and the
Mhm.
jaw gets tight,
Mhm.
and I noticed that for him specifically, and I'm sure other people have the same experiences, is that it happens when he gets emotional about something, and it may not even be conversational. Maybe it's some news that he heard that affected him, and before he even starts to speak, he feels it building in that area first before anywhere else. So I'm wondering if there's any kind of validity to this in some degree. What are your feelings on that?
That's very, very interesting. I know that for some people, uh, there was a significant emotional event that happened in their life when they were little or at some point that triggered, I'm not going to say it caused, but it triggered stuttering. So that has happened. And did it did it lodge itself someplace in the body, in the throat? Who knows? I do know that the throat is one of the places, and I see this a lot, it's one of the places that tightens up. It tightens up when a person gets stuck, when they start to stutter.
Hmm.
So there could very well be some truth to that. Um, there absolutely could be. I, I've not seen any studies doing on it, so I can't.
That's the thing. It's very what's the word? It's very, I guess, esoteric. I don't know if that's the right word, but it's kind of very, I'm drawing a blank on the word, but it's very surface level type of,
Yeah,
information on it. Is really, I don't know. There might be studies on particular situations. I'm not 100%
yeah.
sure. I know that playing around with some of it myself, because we can all experiment on ourselves. I actually had my brother one time when he had a feeling of that, say, you know what, I learned one of the bioenergetic exercises, which is wherever the blockage, so to speak, is of energy, and not just for somebody who gets stuck or stutters, but somebody who has an emotional block.
Mhm.
It affects them in different areas of the body, but wherever that area is, if you actually work it, as you would do like a push-up or a sit-up,
Mhm.
in the moment of, you break the pattern, because what ends up happening, according to the idea of bioenergetics, is that it gets lodged there, the energy gets lodged there. Now the energy doesn't stay there forever, it's not that kind of thing, but what ends
Right.
up happening is, we're always learning, so the body creates a neural pathway or a neural net of saying, hey, this happened when he was 7 or 8, so now every time something emotional hurts him, we're gonna boom, we're gonna tighten this area because we did it that time.
Now that is exactly right. That I know is a fact. That I've studied.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay,
that is
so
correct.
to give like a little experiment, what I did with my brother, and my brother, looking at me like, come on, guy, I'm not gonna listen to you, but he went with it one time. Is he was very, something emotional happened within the family. He started to get that. Okay, and I told him to do these exercises where it sounds funny, but for your throat, they say that you have to actually open your mouth, as wide as you can, and then you breathe in. Well, this is one of the exceptions where you would become a mouth breather, and you would actually expand the rib cage by leaning back, opening the mouth, because when you open the mouth, it directly affects the muscles in the neck,
Mhm.
according to anatomy. These muscles here, as you open wide, all this opens up with it, and as you
Mhm.
breathe in heavily with your mouth, that pressure starts to work it like a muscle. And
Mhm.
so I had him do that, where you breathe and you take these big deep breaths, and you're doing it backwards. And since you're doing it backwards, it creates a vibration. Because if you, I mean, you could try it on your own time. I've tried it. It's very funny how it works. But if you was to lean back as far as you can, and then you extend your arms, and you put your head back, and then you try to breathe in heavily through your mouth while your mouth is open, you
Mhm.
start to shake uncontrollably. And it feels funny, but when you're done doing it for, like I say, a minute, you
Mhm.
feel unbelievably relaxed, almost grounded, as we spoke about earlier. It's a
Mhm.
really interesting technique. So I had him do that, and when he was done, he did it for about a minute or two, and he said that he felt relief of pressure there. There wasn't a cure-all. It wasn't it wasn't something that was instant where it was a cure-all, but he said he felt the relief of pressure to the point where it was manageable, rather than that real tight knot that he had, that it was giving him an issue.
Exactly. Now I'll tell you what I do. It's similar in the sense that I think it accomplishes something similar, if not the same thing. It takes a different route. Remember, we talked about using your body when you speak.
Yes.
Um, so one of the things that we work on is learning to inflect your voice. That is learning how to really work your vocal cords, tightening
Hmm.
and loosening. That's how we inflect our voice, tightening, the air passes over. So when you learn to inflect your voice, like I'm doing now, when you learn how to inflect your voice and
Right.
extend, what you're doing is you're working those vocal cords in a way that maybe you weren't used to doing before, right?
Hmm.
And when you learn a rhythmic way of breathing, the way I'm breathing now, I usually breathe through my nose, so that your speaking becomes very rhythmic and relaxed.
Hmm.
Speaking then for you becomes a very relaxing behavior. And by learning to do it that way, it's kind of accomplishing what you just said, just in a as opposed to doing it one time for an event, you're doing it all the time. Every time you speak, it's relaxing. Like when I speak,
Right.
I just feel relaxed.
And it shows because you're
Because, yeah, because I've developed a way of speaking with my hands, my face,
yes.
the way I inflect my voice that relaxes me. And that kind of accomplishes something very, very similar because if you're used to tightening up, if the brain says, oh, here's something emotional, or here's this situation, we're going to tighten up because that's what we've always done. And you start training yourself to inflect, to extend, to relax, to breathe in a certain way, then you are now, you use the word, and I forgot what you said, but you're breaking the pattern. You're
Yes.
breaking the pattern, and every time you break the pattern, you're also developing a new pattern that's more relaxing.
Right. Yeah, that's a great way of putting it because like you said, now you're training the mind to say, you know what, something emotional happens, we know to relax, not to tighten, but to release. And it learns that new habit over 8 months, as you say. To and by the way, I did read that study as well. So
Yeah.
that sometimes people, uh, I don't know if you ever heard of it. If you heard people talk, and sometimes they name stats that don't make sense.
Yeah. No. If I say something, it's because I've researched, and I might not remember the exact numbers, but they're going to be very, very close, and they're real. It's not something that I just created. You
Yeah,
know,
I'm just messing with you, but I try to do the
it's
same thing
right.
'cause I'm terrible. I'm terrible at remembering the studies and the names and the years. That's why I always say I believe. I put those words in there. I say,
Exactly.
look, go look it up. But I believe that's what it was. Same thing with bioenergetics. I have a surface level knowledge. I'm not no expert, but no, but that's 100%. As a matter of fact, that was in a book that I read. Very good book called The Power of Habit, I believe it is.
I
That
read
just
that. Yeah,
recently came out. Maybe it was
I
a
read
year or
that.
two ago, or something like that. You read that book?
Yeah, I've got a whole library on habit development, skill development. That's what I base my approach on and my personal experience. So I had my
Right.
personal experience, and then I went and did all the research on neuroscience, neuroplasticity, accelerated learning, habit development. I've got almost, I'm not going to say all, but all the best books on habit. I probably have them, or at least a
Oh,
lot
okay.
of them,
It's a
on
good library.
high performance skill development, what athletes use to develop skills. I've got books on that and I've studied it and then put it into practice. So that's why I know this approach is
It
solid.
works.
It's
It
based on
works.
science. I've used it, it works, and it's working for my clients.
Beautiful. It's a beautiful thing. And as a side note there, for those listening, what you just said is very powerful. People probably even missed that part. So focused on talking about listening to what you're talking about, the skill sets, but just having a personal library just for your own benefit, for learning and personal development, man. I have a video that I did on my YouTube channel talking about building your own personal library, and I show a little bit of mine. It's one of the best things you could ever do, especially in an age where everybody's online and playing games and just kind of spazzing out mentally. Yeah, building that library to build those mental muscles. It's not just important to do some reps for your biceps or for your chest, but you got to do some reps for your mind too, man.
That's right.
Yeah,
That's right.
But I don't want to, like I said, I want to be respectful of your time. I appreciate you being on with us now over an hour and 20 minutes about. So
Yeah.
you've created the record. You are the longest interview I've had, but that's a
Okay.
good thing. Not to say that it was just because the conversation was so effortless. But
Exactly.
if you can just now give everybody your information in terms of where they can reach you, your
Yeah.
website, if they want to coach with you personally, how do they go about doing this?
I've tried to consolidate and centralize everything. So basically, if you go to my website, which is Pro 90D, Pro 90D, stands for Proactive Speaking in 90 Days, pro90d.com. If you go there, you'll find everything, links to my YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook private group, which I encourage people to join, all my free courses, my paid courses, my coaching, everything, interviews, it's all there. Alternatively, you can type right into Google how to stop stuttering or stop stuttering, and you'll find me on the first page or the second page because sometimes it moves up and down. But
Yeah.
you'll find me all over that. If you go to YouTube, type in how to stop stuttering, you'll find me all over. So, how to stop stuttering, you'll find me. And this isn't just for people who stutter, but it's also for people that have severe fear of public speaking. That when you need to do a presentation, meeting, and you freeze up, or you start stuttering and normally you don't, this approach can help. This
Yeah,
approach can
I
help
would
people.
agree.
Yeah, this
Just,
can help people that just
just
want to.
seeing you talk, man, I have to admit, and I'm not just saying this because you're an expert on my show, and because some people just like to kiss up. I'm not saying that for those purposes,
Sprinkle, Michael.
but I've actually dealt with and worked with and been on stage with some really good speakers, and I was usually the lackey on the stage, and they were the ones who were kicking it, and you hold up with them without a problem. If we were at the stage now with those speakers who were pretty kick butt, I would say that you would be able to command the stage as well as any of them. So I would say from my own experience to anybody listening that this guy really is good as a speaker.
I've worked with people, I literally work with people around the globe, people that have worked at big companies like UPS, Career Builder, I mean, professionals. I work with them to help them improve their speech. So this is the real deal. Stuff really works. You know what I mean?
You're the real McCoy, huh?
So I really appreciate the opportunity though, man. This is great. I got to get the recording too. I got to get the
Well,
link.
it'll be automatically updated or put onto YouTube. If you look at just type in Healthy Hangout episode 16, or
Okay.
just Healthy Hangout, you'll see all of my Healthy Hangouts pop up if you want to check out any of the other ones. One of the ones I always point to is because it's one of the more popular ones was an episode with a doctor that I had, Dr. William Corder.
Okay.
I think it was episode 8, but I could be wrong. We've had so many now. But one of the more popular ones, it was a really good one. The guy had a fascinating story. So, and good one, hour if you want to check it out. But for those watching, obviously right now, before we wrap this up, just to let you know, Michael Williams, I've actually done the research myself. If you go to YouTube and just type in Michael, before you even start getting to Williams, his stuff starts to pop up. So actually, he's dominating YouTube with just his name alone. So you type in Michael Williams, you'll see a lot of his stuff come up. If you go to Google and you type in Michael Williams and then you put an S before you can even write either stuck or stuttering or whatever the program is, he pops up. I believe you're on the first page, like the first 3 or 4, positions. So you pop up right there. So anybody looking for your programs, they'll find you without problems as long as they put in your name. The reason I say you have to put S is because there's a Michael Williams. I think he was an actor, and if you just put Michael Williams, he pops up.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
So they might be looking for your coaching and end up connecting with the actor, and next thing you know, it's a different program. So thanks again for your patience and for your expertise. Hopefully, we can get you on again at some point and talk about some more good stuff and some new developments you got going on.
Yes, I'd love that. I'd love to talk about my new program, my passive learning. This is for people that are looking for the easy way to improve their speech. This, all you got to do is listen.
Well, I mean, do you have to run? Do you want to give 2 minutes and kind of explain what it is real fast?
Yeah, briefly. I'll just say that I know that a lot of people don't do half the stuff that I asked them to do, at least not at first. And my mentor said, you got to design a program where maybe they do 50% of what you tell them and they can still achieve success, because he's a doctor. And he said, that's what you got to do. And so this program is passive learning. It is designed for you just to listen to it every day or listen to parts of it every day. And that what it will do is begin to transform your thinking, your attitudes, your emotions, and begin to help you motivate yourself from within. You and I already talked about how a person feels confident, it can instantly change their speech. So this is designed to give them that feeling every day and really begin to develop, again, those new neural pathways, those new connections in the way they think. And if we can do that, yeah, maybe they might not get as far as with the other program, but I mean, people could get up to 80%, 90% better than they were just by listening to this, because they'll be motivated to start doing and thinking in a different way. Then when they're ready, they'll want to take the next steps. So I'm going to be working on this. I don't know when I'll have it out. I also have my Android app. I have an iPhone app out already with like a lot of my programs. My Android app should be coming out within the next week, and then I'm going to be working on this new program within the next few weeks. So I appreciate
Nice. A lot of good stuff coming down the pipeline.
A lot of good stuff, man.
All right, well, I want to say thanks again for joining the Healthy Hangout. Let's give Michael Williams an applause here. There you go, the people's champion. Well, we'll look forward to having you on. I'm going to make sure that I stay connected with you, either speaking this way, by phone, or by email. We'll stay connected. I know you're a busy guy. You were in Miami just a few days ago, so I know you're all over the place. So thanks again.
Thanks.
Appreciate your time. We'll definitely have you on within the next few months so that we can, talk shop and see what else is going on. If you want to ask me any questions and beat me over the head, you're more than free to do that at that time as well. So
I will.
thanks again, man.
All right. Thanks, Nicholas.
All right, guys, this has been another episode of the Healthy Hangout. We'll see you on the next episode, guys.